I'll go for it. Starting now. I wanted to ask some attendance, and I definitely want to call out Ben on this before we finish. After 2 days of, I hesitate to use the word awesomeness, but after 2 days of awesomeness,
why do you hesitate to use that word?
It's just so Gen Y, you know, it's just... I wanted to get people's opinions of why they bothered coming, why they think this stuff is important, and moreover, and more difficult, what they say to people who say to them, no, this stuff doesn't matter, it's unimportant, why are we wasting money on space? Because we have all, at some point or another, been asked a question like this. We've all had that question by someone, by a family member, by a friend, by somebody you probably don't like anymore. We've all had a question like that. And you try and come up with an answer, and you try your best, and you know the sorts of things you should say. You know deep down that it's damn important. You just know it is. And it's really hard to explain why. And you might give the kind of the practical Earth-based solutions like, oh, you know, space has given us weather forecasting and GPS and communications, and it helps promote the high-tech space industry, and you know, if we don't have a space program, then who knows, we may end up like T-Rex and getting blown to pieces by an asteroid. Or, you know, we've got another generation of people to inspire. We have predominantly engineering and science and high-tech based jobs coming up, those sorts of challenges facing us 10, 15, 30 years down the road. And then there's the wrong answers, which are all kind of the NASA spin-offs aren't actually true. And I want to cite something that calls back to the Burt Rutan problem. This is a Google Trends graph of two very simple terms. The blue one is a search for the word NASA. Anyone want to guess what the red one is a search for? Almost worse.
Arizona.
Not quite that bad.
It's not high.
Somebody clearly wants the one with the more GBs. Look at it. It's, you know, this is what Burt Rutan was speaking about at TED. It's terrifying that people are more interested in the next new phone with the next new camera and a few more pixels on the screen than something as extraordinary as our National Space Program. But there's a chronic misconception that I think we probably need to address. These numbers are from an article you'll find down here. If you ask the average member of the public how much the US government spends on space, the average answer is about 24% of the budget. And the real answer is a little bit smaller than that. It's about, you know, 1/40th of that. And there are, you know, we have to try and explain to people why this stuff is important. And there's kind of there's the Tigger way and there's the Eeyore way. I want to cite two examples. Some of you may have heard of a conference a couple of years ago called Beyond Belief, and they had Richard Dawkins there, and he gave one of his usual spiels, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson said to him, your message is you know, I agree with your message, but the sharpness of the barbs with which you deliver it, it's so sharp, it's so harsh. I worry that you're damaging the message you're trying to make. And Dawkins replied by quoting a former editor of New Scientist magazine, whose quote, unfortunately, because this is a family show, I can't use in full. But his response was basically this. You can make up the rest. I'll tell you once the cameras stop rolling. Science is interesting, and if you don't... Yeah, okay, yeah, quite. Censored. Science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can go away, was his turn of phrase. Which isn't the right way of doing it. That's just going to annoy people. That's just going to make people feel stupid. It's going to make them feel wrong. And Phil Plait at TAM a couple of weeks ago, he had another phrase that I can't use either, and asking people in the skeptical movement who can get harsh, like Dawkins did in the speech he gave that was being responded to. And don't be a bad word. Don't be an ass. You know, if someone says, "Oh, I think space is a waste of money," you don't respond with, you know, "Oh, you're just being stupid." You have to come up with a coherent, solid reason. Now, the coherent, solid reason isn't necessarily the passionate reason that's deep inside you, but this is why I get up every morning. This is why I go to work and do the very best job that I can. This was actually posted on everyone's favorite website, NASA Watch. We love NASA from 3 Iowa boys. There's 3 kids here who love NASA. There's hung this over their hotel window opposite NASA headquarters. This is a picture taken from the clean room in JPL, looking up at the gallery, where people can go and watch MSL being built. We love JPL. A whole bunch of school kids doing this. This is my favorite. When Spirit got stuck, Julian, age 7, wrote a letter to JPL saying, well, maybe you could do this. His idea doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. He's hooked. We've got an engineer or a scientist or someone's got this, and he's only 7 years old. We need to look after Julian. Same story. These are 3 kids who follow, their mum follows at Mars rover driver, Scott Maxwell, one of the Mars rover drivers. And Scott actually challenged people to take pictures wearing their various Free Spirit clothing or badges or posters or whatever, and he's actually been taking those pictures people have made of themselves, championing the cause, and actually pinned them up outside the door to the MER sequencing room so that everyone can see them as they walk past. And there's this one as well. This is a picture taken of the Cassini Scientists for a Day program. They basically say to a whole bunch of school kids, right, we need to take one of 3 pictures with Cassini, kind of a multi-billion-dollar spacecraft all the way at Saturn. Which one should we take? You give us sound scientific reasoning behind taking one of these 3 pictures. And the school kids, they think about it, they research these moons, they research Saturn, they research Cassini, they learn about the missions, they learn how to do some thinking, how to make an argument, how to debate with people. And then one of them wins and they get their picture taken. This is Saturn's rings and one of its moons there. This is Bob Mitchell, the project manager. This is even on international. They've had European school kids doing this. They've had school kids in the UK who did this, who are then invited to Parliament and go and speak to their representatives about what they did with the Cassini mission. Now, I'm done. I just want to hear what you think. What's your kind of elevator answer if someone says, why the hell are we doing this? And I'm going to call Ben out first.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah, no warning. Why? Because you go to extraordinary lengths, more than anyone else here, to try and engage people and get this stuff to people. Why do you bother?
Well, because I lost my spark for science and space when I was in high school, for whatever reason. And what's interesting is when you talk to a lot of people, you hear the same thing. That's when they lost them. Is kids. We target kids. When kids are already engaged, they're wanting to learn. I mean, I'm not saying don't target kids, but they're already there. It's high school when you lose it. And I don't know what it is, but there's something in there. Maybe it's just a lack of motivation from the teachers, a lack of information, but I lost it. And then I learned that the space shuttle was retiring, and I'm like, well, this is no good. This can't be good. And so then I started doing some research and figuring out, okay, well, maybe this actually does make sense. Then that passion started, then I started digging deeper, and I started going this direction, started going that direction. And I started getting excited about this again. So then I started looking for some live collaborative resources. Yep, that was it. I'm like, let's watch NASA TV, they'll have something. So that's why I do this, because no one else was doing it. And what's really cool is ever since we started, there are people popping up doing this as well. And so you're starting to see this huge influx of people passionate about this, going out there and making this stuff happen. And that's great. We need more of that. We need more people to go out there and do this. So in their social circles, do what it is that we're doing. Because we're trying, we don't want to target you guys. I mean, no offense, but you guys are already doing it. So we're trying to target the people that don't know what you can. And we need more people trying to do that.
Now, imagine, so you're sat down at Thanksgiving dinner and your long-distant cousin or something is sat next to you. And he says, so Ben, what have you been doing recently? And you go, well, I've been doing this website. And it's, it's kind of like, it's like a weekly thing. And then we share videos and we speak about space and we interview people. And he goes, why do you bother with space anyway? What would you say?
What's the question? Why do you go?
Why do we need to spend money? The classic phrase is, why do we waste money in space? Which, of course, is a nonsense because we can't. We have to spend it on the ground.
Actually, that's one of my answers. I say, well, we don't waste money in space. We waste money down here on the ground. But in reality, I ask them, I'll usually, I'll spin it off a little bit. I usually listen a little bit more and ask them, what kind of car do you drive? Does it have GPS in it? What do you use? And get a good feeling. This is just assuming this is someone that I don't already know what they have, right? And get a feeling for, and obviously these are leading questions, but get a feel of where they're at and then explain to them, well, if it wasn't without GPS satellites that are in space, you wouldn't have these things. lifestyle of living, what we lived like in the 40s, prior to the space age, versus what we live like now, you don't perceive space because it's so integrated into your life that you don't know it's there. But if we were to take that away and rip it out, your entire world would come to a screeching halt. Yeah. Imagine your life without these things. And I say, but people don't perceive that. And my goal is to get them to understand that. And usually, for most people, except for one of my friends, that works. There is one friend who I think does just taunt me, who was like, oh, it's stupid, I don't care. All I care about are fast cars. And you know what? And that's great. Good for him. I'll any argument I can go, well, your car only goes 200 miles an hour, my rocket goes 17,500, which you think is a better ride? It's like in the car.
You can't drive the space shuttle.
That's correct. Yes,
you could. You have a different concept.
No, I'm pretty sure that it's just a spike. But you know, that's a valid point, right? How many people can experience space? Well, I can't get them to experience space. I can't bring space to them, and I can't bring them to space. But maybe I can get them talking about space. And maybe I can get a different type of experience around space. And now they're connected to it somehow. And if you're connected, you're engaged. And whether you agree with what I think space should be or not is irrelevant. At least you're engaged in starting a conversation, which will then spur off over here, and they'll talk to their friends and their sphere of influence. And that's why we do what we do. We're trying to open up other spheres of influence. Not to guide the conversation, but to start the conversation.
Michael, you're next. Why on earth did you take the kind of, because I'm guessing there was a non-zero fiscal risk in running something like this. You took risks in.
I'm in the hole, don't worry.
Awesome. How?
Okay.
Why?
Because it's what's next. It's what's next. We came out of the caves, we crossed the oceans. It's what's next. The alternative is we have really, really, really fast cars and really, really great video on the cell phone. That's the beauty of what Bergman was saying in that TED Talk. Was that, okay, how good is the damn cell phone going to be? Right? It's just going to be really, really good. I didn't go anywhere. We didn't progress. It's the next thing. One generation is going to do it. The question is it going to be us? Or are we going to fart around for 100 years and let 100 years from now be when it's next? But at some point, the human race needs to make the next step. And, for us, it's is it going to be us or not?
How do you think we make the sell to our ambivalent friends and family members?
I guess my answer to that is it really important that my ambivalent friends and family members believe it?
Yes.
Is it?
Ultimately.
But they don't believe until you do it, right? I don't think Steve Jobs' friends and family members believed that he was going to create the personal computer industry until he created it, right? He did have a critical mass of people who believed, but that critical mass was relatively small. I don't think his mom believed it until he was fired from Apple 9 years later. So I'm not sure that I'm not going to make forward movement in space at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
You said, sorry, I don't know your name, but you said that everyone actually does need to get it. Catastrophically poor analogy, and one that I could have put up with the kind of why this matters thing, is, yeah?
Oh, no, keep going, but I've got one for the chat.
Excellent. Was everybody behind Christopher Columbus?
No.
Was everyone going, go Chris! Yes!
Well, we're talking about two different things. I totally agree that Christopher Columbus and a new space entrepreneur don't need everybody to get it, and they shouldn't be expected to wait for that. That's obviously true. Nobody's suggesting that you need popular, support for that. Unfortunately, we live in a democracy, right? We're a small system except for all the other ones. And at the end of the day, there are things beyond moving forward in some particular technology and even exploration project for which you will ultimately need either to get government to do something or not to do something. So even as the staunchest libertarian in the room, I dare to say, I do think that cultural change is really important because in the long term, you do need you need to make sure that you at least have not policies that don't get in your way, is if you had large mass audiences, because a lot of the things that space companies will do will require being able to sell an experience to somebody, whether that's flying rides or getting people to pay to drive your Google Lunar X Prize rover on the moon. So there are at least two senses there, or three. So one is markets, two is stopping government from doing bad things, and three is maybe getting government to do good things.
Incredible.
Answering your question as to why they do quantum G from chatter, we all know about word 8. It says it's a biological imperative to go to new land and populate. It said it's a statement, and I quote, "The Earth is the cradle of mankind, but no one can live in the cradle forever until it doesn't touch you. Then you'll never understand."
I like that.
There's this thing of a society has to explore or else it collapses. Throughout history, we have to learn our history or we're doomed to repeat it. And if you look at history, global history, every civilization that stopped exploring has fallen. They've, in some level, now sometimes they build back up, but like China for many, many years, they were the greatest explorers in the world. And then when they stopped exploring, I can't remember the name of the dynasty, but when it started, a new leader came in and he didn't want to explore. He burned all the ships that they owned. He got rid of the entire Chinese fleet. And China went backwards for 400 years. 400 years, their civilization went backwards. We need to explore. It's not just a biological imperative. It's actually like a human imperative, a societal imperative.
The Mastinator just entered the room. I will come to you two after him. Why? It could be easy to have seen you with your comedy-sized check last year, or earlier in the year, and thought, he's in it for the money. And many kind of lay people might think that. It's not an opinion I agree with.
I'm doing something really wrong with that.
Yeah?
I don't know how many people know my history, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. And I was part of a company acquisition wherein I got bought out by a very large IT firm. Or actually a firm that makes all the hardware to do the IT stuff. If I just wanted to make money, I'd still be in that business.
So why did you take your money and build frickin' rockets?
Because I want to be the first man to walk on Mars.
Yeah. Why the hell not?
And I want to give the pictures to Elon Musk.
For those of you who couldn't quite hear that, it's because he wants to give the pictures to Elon Musk. That's Elon Musk. Love you, Elon. Right, sir.
Oh, I'm just confused about the object here. Is it for the space community to define why they do what they do? Is it to have the public be more supportive of space? Is it to recruit new people to come in, young folk?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a case of that. I mean, I personally think that if I go back to this, I'll call it the Rattan effect. Ultimately, our fate is not on this planet, and nor is it with cell phones, to be fair. But this makes me sad. I loved my 3GS. It was a wonderful piece of kit, but the fact that it's outstripping kind of our National Space Agency by very much, an order of magnitude or more, makes me, I wouldn't say angry, it makes me frustrated that I care so passionately about this. I consider myself, that's a bit like David, I consider myself at least 2/3 Martian. I spent 6.5 years living kind of with one eye on Mars through Spirit and Opportunity. And from my point of view, if I get to retirement age, which is basically 3 and a bit decades away, and Dave or one of his colleagues hasn't walked on Mars, I'm going to be pretty angry. I'm going to feel ripped off because for my entire life, all that's really been is the space shuttle, and we've been doing this, and it has been, to use a phrase, awesome. It's been fantastic, and I've met a few astronauts. They are amazing people, they are inspiring people, but we have been doing this for my entire life. And I'd quite like us to maybe do this and go somewhere else. Because your generation, you are so blessed to have had Apollo. I can't even begin to imagine what it would have been like to be sat in front of a little small black and white TV and watch Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. I can't even imagine what that was like 41 years ago. I mean, that's more than a generation ago. We are going to get to a point, tragically soon, whereby walking on the moon, the people who did that will no longer be in living memory. And if Neil and Buzz and all their colleagues are no longer with us at the point where the next person walks on the moon or Mars, I think that's absolutely appalling. I think humanity has failed if that happens.
I think it really is in the school system. I mean, if what the American Nuclear Society and the Health Physics Society go together on, and this you can do with only a few people, is to hold science teachers workshops, because very few science teachers have a degree in science. So if you put on workshops for these people, and it's free, and they get continuing education credit for it, I mean, you'll get a lot of takers.
Open Space Foundation.
Okay. Open Space. But when you ask, why do we do this? And well, one of the things that I want to do in my organization is to change the public's perception of space. And the big perception of space is that if you want to go there, you either have to be a tourist or an astronaut. And you're probably not going to be an astronaut anymore, so it's mostly tourists.
Yeah, you have to be rich or lucky.
Yeah. And that's something I really dislike. If you think about it, the people who came over here on the Mayflower or on the other ships from England, they weren't tourists. And you think about the people who first walked off the shores of Somalia into the continents of Asia and Europe, those were really tourists either. And so this brings the point that we need to stop thinking about space as a fun activity or not a fun activity, like a vacation pastime. Start thinking of it as the next place on where we need to go. Stop thinking about lower orbit. Start thinking about what else goes beyond that.
So we need to stop considering it as a trip and think of it as a migration.
Pretty much. I mean, and not so. We need to stop thinking of it in terms of what's best for the company's bottom line, or what's best for our respective nations. But we need to start thinking about what's best for the future of humanity and our species.
Carrie Ann, your wonderful other half does give us quite a good reason. You spend almost as much time, I guess, probably more, and you put up with the time that you don't spend that he does on this stuff. Why the hell have you dragged yourself all the way here from Minnesota when you could be at home with your feet up watching the TV or going out for dinner? Why do you think this stuff is important?
And on the spot.
I have adopted pretty much the same philosophy as my husband in that.
Mind control.
Good work.
I have come to the belief that this is important for humanity. It is beyond me. We need to get off of this rock no matter what. And I will do whatever I can to educate people to help them realize that in order to make that go.
And I'm going to ask him the same question that he sort of answered, is that when you have that friend or relative sat next to you, and you tell them what you do and how much time you spend doing it and the effort involved, what do you say to them if their response is, why are we wasting all that money in space?
Because we're not wasting money in space. All of the money that goes to space comes back however many fold. I don't actually know the numbers offhand.
wonder where that came from.
Yeah, no, there was no help from the audience on that one. Depending on who I'm speaking with, if it's a family member, they usually can tell that I'm excited and interested enough about it that they sort of give me the pass. But if I also work part-time at a retail store, and my coworkers sometimes say, hey, you know, what do you do in your free time, et cetera, and I tell them, I work with my husband on a video podcast about space. And once we get past the, no, I'm not speaking about aliens, and no, I'm not talking about design space, because those are the two most common, that I'm talking about human space flight, and sometimes they'll say, why? And I'll say, because it's important. I mean, have you ever looked up in the sky at day or night and said, huh, interesting, look at those clouds, look at the sun, I wonder if that's a planet, maybe that's a star, seen a falling star, thought a plane was a falling star, anything along those lines, even looked at the moon on a crystal clear night and said, interesting, and don't you want to know? And that's what we're trying to let you know, we're trying to get you to know, and we're trying to make you want to know more in order to facilitate the passion to get off of this rock.
Nice.
So going back to your slide where you were looking at the public's perception of NASA's funding.
Yeah.
I think Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned that it's roughly half a penny on the dollar, basically 0.05%.
0.5 something, yeah.
When I actually stopped to calculate that, I realized that I spend more money on lunch in a week than I pay the NASA in taxes every year, and you can kind of tell shows now. But I should be more ashamed that NASA's getting that much money rather than I'm spending $30 a week on eating Chinese or McDonald's. So.
We live in a global science-based economy. Innovation comes from science. Money flows to innovation. And I don't think that science has that much of an emphasis in the school system. I don't think our government has enough awareness or commitment to science. My nephew works in materials science at Oak Ridge. He thinks he does very important work. On Tuesday, we're going to a conference at JLab, an accelerator facility, a national lab. They think they're doing very important work. All the sciences do very important work. It's just that it seems like come high school, I mean, we lose them. They're gone. Take a look at the classes in science in college. They're mostly foreign nationals.
Sorry.
We're building on your point. When I was growing up, science was not, well, I was fascinated by science ever since I was little, but the way that it was taught was rote memorization.
You were taught to answer questions, not think for yourself. That's
Right.
If you're in the mega session yesterday evening when we were talking about
test,
that's yeah.
Facts, you get like you ace the test, but you're not taught to think critically, and that sort of turns off everybody to science. It's like this big wall that goes up, and you're like, science, what's that?
It's very few people can look at a periodic table and go, that's interesting. And most people look at the periodic table when they're kind of 14, 15 and go, oh, hell, I've got to remember this. Tim, I'm going to come to you next after I've said something. If you've not seen the question, I'll show you the question. The question's this. Well, it's what do you say when people ask you one of these? There is, it's all picked up on the shortfall of people taking STEM subjects. And back in the UK, the former science minister bumped into Richard Noble, Sir Richard Noble, in fact, the current, he was the project manager for the current world land speed record holder thrust SSC, And Lord Drayson, who was the former science minister, said to Richard Noble, he said, Richard, I just want to say, Thrust SSC was an awesome project. My son went and did engineering at university because of Thrust SSC, because of this land speed record car, because it was just so extraordinary. I need you to do something again. I need you to do something new now, because we have this problem again. We have this catastrophic shortfall between the number of engineers industry needs and the number of engineers who are coming out of the educational system, forecasting for the future. And so he's actually started a brand new project called Bloodhound SSC. Now, any big project like this, traditionally, will be entirely motivated by, we're going to do this, he famously, after he broke the world land speed record in the 80s with Thrust 2, at Black Rock Desert, a member of the media said to him, Richard, now you've done it, why did you do this? And he said, I did it for Britain and the hell of it. Which is, in itself, not entirely unnoble, pun not intended. The top mission aim of Bloodhound SSC is to inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers with an engineering adventure. And they're almost doing, it's not open source, they can't go that far, but they've shared their vehicle specification document, they're going to share their CAD files, they're going to share telemetry, and so there are school kids, I used to help them out with this thing called a Bloodhound Ambassador, which is kind of the solar system ambassador analogy for a land speed record car. I was at this county fair equivalent event, and I had kids this big, this big, and this big, making little balloon-powered cars. They were sticking things together, making little kind of axles, and blowing up a balloon and watching these things race across the floor. They were racing them with each other, and they were getting some of the principles of physics. You could see them getting the balloon and thinking, which way around am I going to stick this to make the car go this way? They had to think for themselves and work stuff out. And they will have a very easy means to measure their own success. And in fact, they're already getting a measurable impact in that the universities directly involved with the project, University of the West of England and others, they have seen a huge spike in the number of applications for engineering, maths, and science-based courses straight off the back of Bloodhound SSC. Did someone else have their hand up, or I'll just embarrass Tim on the spot?
I'll embarrass Tim.
Let's embarrass Tim. Okay. You have a little small person. Why are you here right now rather than posting pictures of your small person being delightful and putting them on YouTube? Yeah, you can. Yeah. Other than your camera is full, but.
I bought an external hard drive just for pictures.
Just for the kid. Exquisite.
So why am I here?
Yeah.
Instead of with her?
Yes.
It's an investment in her future. I'm here because I see the promise of a better tomorrow through the application of space technology on Earth and beyond. And the fact that when we do these type of technology programs and when we work on these things, it makes life for the entire planet better, which is good for her. Now, on a personal level, she gets a better dad because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. I love space. If I wasn't doing it, I wouldn't be as alive. And she wouldn't get that from me. So for me, as a person, I have to be working on something that lights me up so that she gets to see that and so that I can be a role model for her, that you do what turns you on. Don't do what society says is cool or what other people say is a better career choice. Do what you love, and that is what life is about. And so if I wasn't doing that, I couldn't be honest with her, and I couldn't say, go out and do the things that you love in life if I wasn't doing it.
You haven't done the same. Jen, wipe that smoke off your face. You're coming next. You put your hand up. What do you want to say?
For me, this is something that I've been into ever since I was a little kid. I think I was 3 years old when I decided I wanted to be an astronaut. The only thing I can think of that maybe sparked it was that my dad worked at the airport, and so he would take me out when I was a kid because I liked to watch the planes fly overhead. And then by the time I was 7, I figured out, well, somebody has to actually go out and build that, so I guess I'll be an engineer. But I think for me, what it really comes down to is the fact that if we look at social animals, studies have shown time and time again that the vast majority of the populations are fairly content to stay where they are. They can build communities, they can build homes, they can find strength and safety in numbers. But there's always a small percentage of that population that has to go out and go do something new. They either go establish a new colony, go explore for new resources, and a lot of times they fail. A lot of times it does not work. But the ones that do succeed, the ones that go out, they establish new communities, they establish new civilizations in the case of the Indian. And in doing so, they improve the genetic diversity of their species, and they also make it less likely that a catastrophic event will take that species out. And I think we are now sufficiently advanced as a species that we have to start taking those next steps so that we're not putting all of our eggs in this one basket that we have right here, right now, and we start doing the things that we know we are eventually going to have to do if our species and then whatever comes after us is going to make it. We have enough knowledge of physics and astronomy and engineering and geology and all that now that there is no other alternative. There is no other answer. And so I agree completely with Mike that the question is, are we going to be the ones that step up and do it, or are we going to punt it off for somebody else?
So a combination of the kind of the asteroid or comet impact threat is the very first time we can take a natural disaster and actually do something about it before it happens. Plus, courtesy of all the other natural disasters, or one we may not be able to fix, we need insurance by getting some people off work, full stop.
I'm kind of along the same way. People ask me what I do for a living, and I say, well, I'm going through a career change. I spent 30 years writing software, and now I want to build rockets. And the next question is invariably,
why do you want to build rockets?
And the answer is, to me, it's the human species survival imperative. I want my kids and their kids and their kids' kids' lives to be better than the ones that went on before. And I wish to actually actively contribute to that betterment and to the preservation of humanity as a civilization. I think it deserves to survive. And I want to contribute to that. And my feeling is that, just like you guys, that if all we do is stay on this rock, the probability of that continuing for a long period of time is diminished significantly. Whether we do ourselves in, or whether we get hit by a flying rock, or whether we get hit by a gamma ray burst from a nearby supernova, doesn't matter. Sooner or later, something will happen. And if we, this generation of human civilization, if we have the chance of spreading out beyond our immediate neighborhood, and we don't take it, the next generations might not get that chance. It's our responsibility. We have to.
Jen's still tweeting. Yes.
Yeah, and if I can add that, it's not just diversification of risk in insurance terms. It's also that, if you think back to the 1970s, the sort of Paul Ehrlich environmentalist extremist movement, Club of Rome, Limits of Growth, Population Bomb, were obsessed with the idea that we lived on a planet of limited resources and that population would grow exponentially and our resources would ultimately decline. And the reality is, of course, they didn't understand technological improvement and gains in productivity, but they also failed to recognize that the resources available to us are far vaster than those that happen to be available on this particular rock. So for me, probably the most compelling reason to go out and settle the solar system is the resources of space. And we were talking about this in our session earlier. That means space energy resources, both solar power and eventually someday when it's actually developed, fusion, as well as tapping into the vast mineral resources of the asteroid belt and NEOs, but also using oil slots and zero gravity research, and all of those things that can't be done here on Earth. I think will make all of our lives, all of our children's lives, wealthier and healthier and greener.
Yeah. Go on. No, I'm going to go to Jen, because I promise. Okay, I've been following you on Twitter, and when I got made redundant last November from my job, I went through this phase of 20 minutes of absolute abject horror, followed by about 36 hours of kind of a in-denial euphoria that I had no idea what was going to come next, but I was fairly sure it was going to rock. And I get the feeling somehow, I felt the same, like, when you told people what you were going to do, I felt to me like you were doing the same thing. It was like I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do next. I've got a few things I might do, but something will work out and it will rock. Why did you fall on your sword and go for that?
Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of other great options. I feel like I have to. I've got some great ideas, and I feel like they're worth exploring, and I would never forgive myself if I didn't at least give it a shot and see if I can make it happen. I may fail, and if I do, then something else will come along and it'll work out, but I have to shoot for the top level, the dream.
Just going to throw this question out to the group. Why is it that the budget, this country's space agency's budget, has basically stayed level with inflation post-Apollo? Because of the impact.
As opposed to growing or not sinking further.
So what did you say? I didn't.
As opposed to,
No impact.
There's no impact?
as opposed to being at some level that everybody thinks is adequate to meet the desires to expand and see various programs and
It
activities.
doesn't impact, and more, well, let me rephrase that. It doesn't impact in a way that is measurable, granular, and understandable to the average person. It's easy to say it provides inspiration. It's easy to say it gets kids to study science and math. How do you measure it? That's not how you measure. And that's not to say it's not important, but you can't measure it. You can talk about, it's very easy to measure how many teachers we have in schools. It's very easy to measure how many people currently have jobs. It's easy to measure how much is my paycheck this week. Those, if NASA, well, if space in general, and to a certain degree NASA by extension, although those aren't the same things, can do that, it can give us,
Metrics of impact.
a real metrics of impact, yes, thank you, that everybody understands and agrees with, we get the budget we need.
Let me just suggest that there are two answers. One is the benefits of NASA are hard to measure. The other is there aren't benefits. Right? It could be both of them. But I mean, look, we have to be candid and recognize that most of the money that's been spent on NASA has been pissed into a drain. It's just wasted. So Apollo inspired. Was it really worth X number of billions of dollars to do that?
Yes. My counter statement
Really?
is that
Yes.
NIH gets its budget increase each year without fail, and that increase in
I'm going to come to you in a minute.
Yeah, but it's because it's possible to articulate the benefits.
I'm gonna come-
The benefits are
definitely come
actually
to
visible. And again, I'm not saying that government spending on space has no benefits. All I'm saying is that a lot of money that's spent on space currently is just wasted. And it's wasted because it's captured by a political process to keep employed overpaid engineers and paper pushers. They're doing nothing but keeping in space old systems that do nothing but keep the cost of space access high. Right? And we have to be honest about that. And we're making actually some progress towards fixing that because this administration actually realizes that there should be two separate questions of whether government should fund activity in space versus running things. And that we would waste less money if government funded but didn't run.
I disagree with your premise.
Do you think every dollar spent on space is worthwhile?
Every dollar spent on space comes back into the industry and businesses and technologies and the government 7 times. It's a 7x.
No, but that's not true for every dollar. It might be that some dollars come back 30 times, and some dollars come back 1/30th.
So say money on.
We spend NASA every year. That's the number.
So like for example, what he's arguing is, for example, so let's.
It's not true. It's fundamentally not true.
Well, then
hold on, guys.
Then what is the truth of that? Because that's a number that I've heard from a lot of sources.
From self-serving politicians in Washington who want to defend overpaid jobs in their district. It's just poor.
There was a study done, and I'm sorry, I can't remember off my head, but there was a study done, and basically found that the return was less than what you find in private industry, because the typical, where the 7 number comes from, the American Institute of Statistics, they basically took the assumption, they found what R&D from industry produces, and then they basically said, okay, well, we know NASA produces that much, so we know NASA spends that much, so it must, and NASA doesn't have to worry about the overhead of actually doing operations. So it must inherently be that much, be worth 7 times that. That's what the 7
Okay,
numbers.
so what's the percentage of bureaucrats versus real people who do research, technology, and engineering in NASA? What's the percentage?
We're just to make an observation.
It's 5.
The nature of the talk. We're in the how, not the why.
Yeah, exactly.
We moved into how, and this talk is about why.
Yeah.
Just to make the rules as per the rules. Right.
But, no, but I don't want to end up. I don't want to in a.
I think is a much bigger. I mean, the purpose of your talk was a much broader question.
I want to come back to I want to come back to you because you work in this industry. Okay, again, you could be bowling right now. Why have you taken your weekend and come here? What drives you to go to schools and speak to them? What is it that you think is so important about this that you spend your spare time doing it as well as your job?
JFK was wrong. JFK believed that the entire reason for NASA was a concept called preeminence. That we could show that we had the best society on the planet by going to the moon. That was the biggest benefit that we could derive out of the entire Apollo program. And he was wrong. Because what we got out of it was hundreds of industries, billions of dollars of technology that still are being derived today from the work that was done during Apollo and during that era. You know, here's an example. The entire cryogenics industry was spawned out of the thermonuclear rocket program, on which they spent some, small numbers of hundreds of millions of dollars. And it wasn't a phenomenal amount. But that entire cryogenics industry, liquid nitrogen, liquid helium, all that kind of stuff, all came from that. So it's those kinds of things spawned electronics, microcircuits. I mean, think about computers today. A lot of that was spawned because some of it was spawned because of war, but some of it was spawned because of Apollo. Trying to do something that was just people kind of thought was impossible. So if you look at all the kinds of benefits that were derived from a large investment in a research project, the spin-offs in that were worth way more than the preeminence, right? But you still hear the preeminence argument from every member of Congress. Even if you only break even on the science and technology, the inspiration for our students to go forward and learn new things and try hard stuff and build engineering and technology the benefits are huge.
I'm not saying benefits aren't huge. I'm saying you have to compare them to the costs.
Are the costs greater? The costs are huge. Are the benefits dollars? Are the benefits greater than 1-to-1?
That's not really the fair question.
That's a very fair question.
No. The actual question is, is our economy essentially better off today than it would have been had we not put this money? Have we not taken it out of the private sector and put it into this government plan program? That's the real question. And on the whole, I think the answer is pretty clearly no. And so to tie this back into why I do this, if this here is cheerleading for a government program that has gone round and round in circles in low Earth orbit, I don't get excited about that. So when people ask me, why do I do this? That's never my answer. My answer is the long-term promise, which NASA could actually play a constructive role in, primarily by being a good customer. But it's changing the mentality of space and getting people to think of it not as a program, but a place. And a place in which a government program has a role to play, perhaps a facilitating role, but which ultimately is going to be, it's a frontier that's going to be opened by private companies. And they're companies like, we have some of them represented here today, like Maston and Virgin and all those other companies. Those are the ones that are going to open space. So that's the this that I get excited about. And so that there's plenty
of private companies making profits on private space, commercial space, satellites in particular. There's lots and lots and lots of commercial satellites.
Yeah, it's a $220 billion a year industry, and it's changed our lives.
Exactly. So when you just talk about space, you can't say commercial space is just beginning to exist.
Oh, I agree with you. I didn't say that.
So, well, kind of. But, so we're on the same page there. I know the kinds of things that people in NASA do. And Even NASA's work on things like Earth science. You know, the money that NASA puts into Earth science is billions and billions of dollars a year. But the benefits that come back out of that, just to the farmers and the firefighters, is enormous. So,
along those lines, though, see, that's actually that's the cell that works. You know, you can't make that cell with human spaceflight.
why not?
We haven't done it because it doesn't. I mean, this drifts back into the how issue. But it's not something that touches people. Not in a way that means something to them. I mean, it means something like the whole
inspiration is different than tangible benefits, and I think you're mixing those two as well.
Well, they're different. Yes, I totally agree.
The general public, in my opinion, is never going to want something that fundamentally advances science. I don't think that's.
Oh yeah, they do.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
I think that's a bigger kind of motivation than the inspiration piece.
Well, NIH gets much more money for breast cancer research than they do for prostate cancer. Why? I mean, I think NASA might profit from sociology. I mean, you got to figure out why the government does what the government does. They canceled the collider.
The purpose of my original question was to compare two government agencies, which I guess we all can agree in the room that all government agencies will have some inefficiency.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So why is it that NIH's budget is so
Actually, there's a related question to that.
right? But so my original premise though is to get us to think about why it is that the healthcare.
Well, I talked to somebody who works with NIH.
It's well, and it's to finish my thoughts because it impacts us directly. Right? We all relate to health and how that traces back to solving the problems that affect our lives and our longevity on this earth, right? But you know, when you make that same statement for human exploration, you do that trace back. You have to excise human exploration from the rest of NASA and the it's the human exploration that always seems to bring the highest controversy. And so ask the question, why is it that it's always that NASA's budget profile folks who follow has stayed up through Republican and Democratic administration? And the conclusion I've come to is that that's about the level of pain that the public is willing to bear. They don't want a human space exploration program so badly that they're willing to rattle the cage over our representatives. They'll go to the mat for certain other issues here, wars and public health. Let's think about healthcare, the healthcare debate.
Okay, we're going down a route that's so far from what we started out talking about, it's probably not. Save it for the next SpaceUp and start your own session.
But if you're figuring out why, you need to figure out why politicians do what they do. I think that's the point.
But why is space, why does space have to be NASA?
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't.
Right, so why is that? And I understand the relevancy, but in the bigger picture, why is it relevant? Who cares if it's NASA that goes to space?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If I go to the moon on one of Master's rockets, which I will, I'll go to Mars. Just so you know, I'll go to Mars. Who cares if it's NASA that doesn't do stuff with NASA? It doesn't matter so long as we get there.
Okay, we are over time, and I want this guy to be able to kind of wrap up his damn conference so we can go home already, or go drinking already.
That's we're going to rename it, by the way.
What, Drink Up DC?
Drink Up DC.
Pack Up DC.
I want to put three things on the screen that, to me, seem to be an overriding message that was ones I thought of. I think I've thought of all these already, but I've heard them from multiple people here. And if this isn't why we do this, then maybe it should be why we do it. And this one's important. Because if we don't fight for this, then we're going to have a big hole in terms of skill sets in 20 years' time.
You have them today.
Exactly. How many vacancies with you guys?
Northrop Grumman currently has 10,000 positions open worldwide. The majority of them are actually engineering positions.
Wow. To innovate, You know, there's all those tangible kind of things that have actually come out of the space program, be it NASA or things around, you know, space-themed government investment. And that one, because the dinosaurs didn't have a space program. And if they did, we'd have velociraptors in here, not humans instead. Michael, your comment.
We're done.